Hi, it's Sheila, back with the Stopwatch Gardener Podcast. And it is the 17th of March. Happy St. Patrick's Day for those who celebrate. And who doesn't love Irish people? Let's all celebrate. I'm standing in the courtyard garden at the moment, and it is a breezy day. The skimmia, the hebe, the hellebores, even the ivy on the wall are all shivering in this breeze. You can probably hear it behind me. Looking for things that I know need to be done. I don't need to look too hard, but what I'm trying to do now is prioritize. So I have got some hebe cuttings that went into one of the large Stewart's plastic big tubs that I grow vegetables in here against this warmest wall. And these are just bits of that hebe over there that I snapped off last year because that hebe was getting too big for its space. Put into the corner of this tub, and in the rich compost they have all taken. So those need to be potted up for the plant sale. It is about 4 weeks until the plant sale, which I am holding as part of our next open day for Scotland's Garden Scheme in aid of my friend's rare disease charity. If you are near East Lothian on the 24th and 25th of April, please come along. I hope that, like me, you cannot walk past a plant sale. So come along and grab a plant from our garden to your garden and help support an important cause. The charity we're raising money for is called the NA Advocacy. That's the advocacy for neuroacanthocytosis patients. My friend's daughter fell ill with this rare inherited disease when she was just 21 years old. She had been asymptomatic completely before then, but then started to suffer from this neurodegenerative disease, which turns out to be one of the rarest in the world. That's the NA Advocacy. Come along on the 24th and 5th of April here to the garden in East Lothian, and you can support the advocacy's work and the work of Scotland's Garden Scheme. As I'm talking, I'm just looking around to see other things that absolutely need to be done. Here is the Wintersweet against the same wall where the peach tree is planted, and its beautiful shaggy blooms have all gone over now. I need to turn that close right back to the wall so that it doesn't take up too much space. And below it is a woody salvia called Salvia Salmia pink. I'm looking low down on the plant to see how low I can cut it. Currently it's growing in a raised bed that is about 75 centimeters tall, and then it again is about 75 centimeters tall, so I want to cut it right back down low so it doesn't again take up too much space. This whole garden is only 10 meters by 17, so I'm trying not to allow plants to bully other plants. Let's see what else is going on here. Pleased to see the Iris sibirica that I got from my mother-in-law's garden a few years ago is looking good, coming up. The green blades of the foliage are poking up through the grassy brown of last year's leaves. Now I'm at this big container that's just next to the back door. It is not looking too good because the precious white perennial, which is semi-evergreen, is called Lychnis coronariaBox. It is a beautiful white version of the rose campion, and I've left it more or less untouched last year because I wanted it to go to seed, but all of the outer leaves are speckled with brown. It is not looking happy at all, but the newest leaves on the inside are starting to emerge, so I think I'll trim off those older ones and remove some of the other self-seeded linaria, the toadflax that is in this container as well. Everywhere I look, something to do, but as I'm leaving the courtyard, just kind of look back and think, what is my priority? I think it'll have to be that WinterSweet, cutting back the WinterSweet, and also potting up the hebe before they get too much into growth in the springtime. I've just caught sight too of this container where I have confined the black peppermint, and in amongst the plants are the ends of my supermarket spring onions that have gone into the soil. They don't mind sharing with the mint, so I've got to cut back that mint if I can. Let's see. I'm coming around just to the raised border by the back door. and looking at, you might be able to hear the rattle of the honesty. These papery white seed heads, I remember the first year I grew these thinking, why am I doing it wrong? All of my white papery seed heads look black and moldy, and that was because they hadn't opened yet to show the inside. Beneath them, the Scylla is looking lovely. The Cornus Westonburt has to be cut back because its red stems are now starting to come out. The leaves are coming out. Oh, this wind today. Okay, this is a priority here. I have an old genuine Scottish whiskey barrel that's been cut in half, made into 2 big planters as you come around from the back door into the back garden. And here's where my potatoes are going to go. I just have a few seed potatoes. They are, I can't now remember the variety. It's the first year I'm growing them. My colleague at Amosfield Walled Garden, where I volunteer, recommended them and said that for Amosfield, this was the heaviest cropper last year. And in the second barrel, which is currently full of that Iris Severica I mentioned, I think I'm just going to let it continue to be the Iris, but I would like to take out some of this old papery foliage. As we get into March now, I feel that the insects that have been sheltering, specifically the ladybirds, if you like, will be okay if I start to cut some of this back. Here's something else that certainly needs to be done. This is the winter clematis, which is slightly tender. It's Clematis Europhylla, winter beauty, evergreen, but it's only the leaves that are out in the sun here that look healthy and green. The ones underneath, when I cut this back, are going to look terrible, black and hanging and dead. But this needs to be cut back because this clematis shares this wall with a group 3 clematis which flowers in July called Madame Julia Corrivon. She's already been pruned and fed and mulched, and I want to make sure that she gets all the sunlight on her face that she needs. Coming around to the south elevation of the house. Oh, this wind, it's not going to let us have a break today, is it? So on the south elevation, we have a big picture window which shows back into the house, and to the left and right of the picture window is a stretch of beautiful warm wall. And on this part of the wall, which is only, I would say, 2 meters wide, I have 2 old pear trees that are growing as a Belgian fence. That is to say, it's an espalier flat up against the wall, but it is in diamond shapes, and the trees crisscross each other, and they do look beautiful in leaf, or at this time of year just with bare stems and the buds coming out. And I can see, oh, look at that, sheltering in behind one of the buds is a ladybird. Hello, I'm not going to disturb you. At this time of year, I just like to check to see if there's any sign of rust. I had a problem a few years ago, and all of my emerging pear flowers were tipped with red, and I thought, oh, extra pink blossom. This year it wasn't, it was rust. But I have since removed the juniper that I think was partly responsible for sheltering that rust. So, no, these all look okay. I try not to count my pears before they're hatched, but of course I can't resist seeing how many places on the tree are going to show blossom. This is a Concord, which is a pear that descends from the very popular conference, and it's here as a pollinator to my most beloved tree, which is a Williams Bon Chrétien. The same variety in America is known as Bartlett, and it's the most popular pear for tinned pears or canned pears. And the Williams pear has a lot more blossom on it, but the Concord has enough to pollinate. So we're all going to be great friends this year. Looking beautiful. I'm crossing in front of the picture window now, and that's where I have a bench. And behind the bench, 3 pots of mixed tulips. This is I think this is red foxtrot and maybe showcase in here, along with some of the ubiquitous blue forget-me-nots. Those are right up against the house because I thought I'd try keeping them a little bit more sheltered from the weather this winter, and they seem to be coming along fine. I would like them to be brilliant and performing at the end of April, so I don't want them to come along too fast. Coming over to the other wall that I mentioned that's on one side of the picture window is another espalier, but this one is a little more ambitious. This is an espaliered Lakemont, which was meant to be a seedless white. It was not seedless, but it's still a baby, so I shouldn't be taking bunches off it anyway. But it's been closely pruned into a 3-tier espalier, so we'll see how that goes this year. Let's see. I think we'll go to the upper garden now. So this gravel path that I'm on runs all the way around the house, the extension to the house that was built before we came here, but the original house is just an old Scottish farm worker's cottage, and behind it used to be a rectangular garden, but when this extension was made, it took a big bite out of the garden, so now we have a U-shape instead of a rectangle, and steps up to the main garden. So we're going up here. I've got an upper level here which has a hedge that runs all the way around it, and it is a hedge of the Portland rose, Rose de Recht, a very fragrant old rose, and that was all pruned in February. Just checking on the buds. Looks like it's happy. For the first year I'm trying to layer some of this Rose de Recht to get more plants, plug up a gap in the hedge that we had to dig when we were putting in a large electricity cable from our main house through the garden back to the new guest house, my husband's project, which took a number of years to complete but is now done. It is, I call it the tiny house. It is a guest house for friends and family from abroad who come to Scotland, who are going to stay with us for a few days. And just come up the last couple of stairs to the final terrace, which is where I have the main seating area on a paved patio, and the patio is surrounded by wooden raised containers that are planted chiefly for winter interest. Some evergreens, beautiful Daphnes and Mahonia, the old seed heads of sedum, which I can think about cutting back now, ferns, Polystichum, setiferum, and even in the corners, getting what sun there is, some Salvia Salmia. Now, it would prefer to be in full sun, but as long as I make sure the Daphne doesn't crowd it too much, it is open to the sky. It's just not quite in the full sun because the tiny house behind it does throw shade onto it. But I'm just looking at what I could do here. This doesn't feel very high priority, although I do feel that I should liberate a couple plants here that are in pots and plant them here straight into the wooden containers. As I said, a lot of this area is planted for winter interest around that patio I mentioned that has the wooden containers. There are also 3 beds in the ground, and these are chiefly planted for winter. We have box balls clipped into shape amongst Cornus Midwinter Beauty and the earliest Narcissus I know, which is Rijnveld's early sensation, which was flowering in January this year in Scotland. Where we are in southeast Scotland, we're almost 56 degrees north. That is more northerly than Moscow, but still these fantastic early Narcissus bloomed for us. They're looking good this year. A real host of golden daffodils. Let's see what else is out here now. Coming to one of those beds at the ground that is near the patio. On one side of the path is where this bed sits, and on the other side of the path are my 3 vegetable beds. I have to get some fleece across this center bed because my precious LoderoSedum cabbage, which was so beautiful last year, with giant fan-shaped iridescent leaves that look like peacock's tails. I'm growing it from seed for the first time, and I have a leftover plant from last year which is still hanging on, and I want to protect these from the pigeons and anyone else who wants to have a go at them. But also I want to get some warmth into the soil if I can. I recently planted out my broad beans, which are extremely hardy. However, I'm sure they'd appreciate a little warmth. But on the other side of the path from the vegetable beds is this winter bed, and I love it so much. In the center of the bed, which is in the form of a triangle, is a Magnolia stellata. And behind that, now almost invisible, pruned almost to the ground, thank you to my husband Ralph, is Buddleia Davidii. But the Magnolia stellata is holding up its branches, its grey-brown branches with the fuzzy buds of the flowers which will come later. I love that magnolias evolved before bees, so they are pollinated by insects that crawl up, and these shaggy white flowers will be open in April. Underneath it we have the plumes of green snowdrop foliage which are going past. They like it in this bed. There's a Stipa gigantea which has been cut back, some Lychnis coronaria. I can see that tuft of blue-green foliage there. That is a magenta standard form. There's also the brown of old ferns, Matuca, Struthiopetrus. Those will be out and covering up the foliage of the tulips that are just emerging now, species tulips, which I love. One called Helen, and it's Tulipa humilis, Helen. I grow these in circles in the tiny, tiny lawn that I passed on the way up here to this this kind of winter terrace. But this is the first year that I've grown the Tulipa Helen in among and around the winter planting of the snowdrops and the Magnolia stellata. There's also cyclamen coum here, which I am thrilled to see is self-seeding. I can see the round leaves with a center line down them. Those are the babies that will, I hope, flower next year, so I'm going to leave those well alone. I can see a few weeds that I need to take out here, but mainly this is looking good. I'd try to do the minimum here. I don't want to disturb, if I can, any of my insect babies who are sheltering. But I'm pleased with this. I can see there's something in a container here which really needs to go into the ground. It's a skimmia. I was not terribly happy here, though. I wonder if I should put it somewhere else. I think I am going to put you somewhere else, skimmia. I love you so much. I think you do not like that bed. And I remember testing the soil here at the other bed on the other side of the winter terrace last year, and it was more acidic. I think I might put the skimmia there. Jobs. I can see the plants that are lined up either side of the path which runs in the other direction away from that winter terrace, and that leads to the end of the tiny house, which is my vestigial shed, my potting shed. Looking pretty tiny in here. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4 bikes hanging on the wall. We need 1 bike. Hopefully I can convince my husband to get these out so I have more space for potting in here. But the path to this shed is lined with plants for my plant sale for the open garden days on April 24th and 25th, and they are all looking good. There's a lot of phlox here, astrantia, some Lychnis, some bluebells. I want to verify that these are English bluebells before they go into the sale, of course. Some struggling, but not dead, Sweet William. I tried to grow from seed, but not everything is labeled, and it does need to be labeled before the sale. Also, I'm looking at the bed which has those Buxus balls and the Cornus Midwinter Beauty and This is also where I grow my precious wild Maine lupins that my mother gave me many years ago. And in amongst these lupins are forget-me-nots. That's fine. They're biennial. They're not going to interfere. But I wouldn't remove or transplant some of the other plants that are growing in among here, because I want to give more light and air to the preferred plants in here, which include not just the lupins, but the digitalis, some honesty, and at the front a Patricia geranium called Patricia. My mother was called Patricia, so I planted that in her memory. There's also a helenium. I have always wanted to grow heleniums with their amazing bee-friendly little central domes of pollen, but I've never been able to, so I'm trying to clear out a space around that to give the helenium a chance of survival. The two raised wooden containers that are at the front of this terrace are planted with some salvia, culinary salvia, and nestling among that I can see a ladybug. I was raised calling them ladybugs, and I just can't really retrain myself to say ladybird, but I'll try. And some beautiful hellebores, some very robust roses. I think this is Margaret Merrill. I bought it years ago as a Margaret Merrill, but I'm not convinced it's Margaret Merrill, because Margaret Merrill is a beautifully scented white rose, and this rose is distinctly pinkish. I sent it to my rose expert contact, but he hasn't come back to me to tell me his opinion. The emerging foliage is very red, and the finished leaves, when they're done, are very glossy deep green. There's another matching bed on the other side, but it grows a different rose, a crocus rose. That is one of the David Austin roses that has the most beautiful scent. Pale cream colored rose in summer, and it too has culinary sage around it, and there's also a gigantic lemon thyme, which makes the healthiest looking green mound you've ever seen, but it's very big. It almost looks like a U. It's so healthy and green and round, but I think we're gonna have to cut that back. Priorities. If I had to say what are my priorities here, I would say cutting back the sedum, labeling these plants, liberating these potted alchemilla from their pots. Maybe I shouldn't. I'm remembering now that the reason I planted them in their pots is that they wouldn't run and disturb the salvia that I mentioned earlier, the salvia that would like a little more sun on its face. Maybe I'll leave them in their pots, but just mulch on top of them so you can't see the pots. Now, coming down to the grass area, we have the absolute star plant of the moment, which is an Ingrid espaliered almond. It is full of pink blossom, which is quivering in this robust breeze. I like the blossom color more than the buds. The buds are intensely pink, little pointed pink buds, but when they open, they're a much more subtle, pale apple blossom pink. This Ingrid tree is one of 6 in this mixed espalier, again shaped like a diamond to echo the shape of the two pairs I mentioned on the warm wall near the picture window. And these, I love these diamonds. To me, they recall the cross of the Scottish flag, even though there's no blue and white here. And I'm thrilled to say that the pear in this mixed espalier, the most precious pear, which is Burr Hardy, is going to flower this year. Hello, beautiful. Look at your blossoms. Little clumps of blossom ready to flower all the way up the stem. And I'll just have to keep an eye on this pruning and make sure it doesn't exhaust itself by forming massive clusters of growth that try to turn into trees. All these espalier trees, they want to be a tree with a normal crown at the top. So especially, and Ingrid, the almond, is already doing it, it tries to create a nest of stems, branches, flowers, buds, leaves at the very top. So you have to keep an eye on that and even it out, or otherwise it'll look increasingly full at the top and bare at the bottom. That is looking good. And at the very end, there is a conference pear. This too is going to flower for the first time this year. As we move towards this end of the espalier, the soil conditions underneath the roots of these trees is more challenging because we are moving to the side of the garden that has an old rowan tree. And I know that it's not just the tree roots that this espalier is competing with. It's the fact that there is a lot of builder's rubble underneath here. This side of the garden has a very small lawn. On the other side, we have a similar sized patch of lawn. And I'd say this patch of lawn is maybe 6 meters by 5 meters, or 7 meters by 5 meters, but it's not flat. The landscaper was trying to flatten it out for me so that we could put a table and chairs here, which is here, but it's just not flat because there is so much rubble. He just couldn't quite flatten it. So I'm delighted to see that far end of the espalier is flowering, because you've had a hard time, conference, haven't you? Lots going on in your roots, but I admire you and I respect you. I heard someone from a UK tree organization, I cannot remember what it's called, saying the best thing you can do for a tree is mulch it. If a tree is suffering, is mulch it. You don't have to feed it, but make sure you mulch it. Oh, let's just wait till the emergency services pass by. Okay. Yes, so as I was saying, the best thing apparently you can do for a tree that might be under pressure is to mulch it. So this has had a generous mulch, not right up to the base, but around its rooting area. And that promotes excellent soil health, and excellent soil health promotes happy plants. So I'm thrilled to see a few, 1, 2, 3 plumes of emerging blossom on that conference. Walking along the length of the espalier, I'm crossing over the steps and going to the other side of the espalier where we have a Cox's orange pippin. Very tricky to grow tree, but evidently with a delicious taste. And this too looks like it's going to flower for the first time. Apples, of course, come into flower much later than the pears, the almonds, the peaches, the plums. But I can tell that these are flowering buds. They have that plump, expectant look. And next to the Cox's orange pippin, again in an X formation, is another espaliered apple. This is one that used to grow as a standard espalier with the horizontal tiers of branches, but I wanted it to match the others in the diamond shape, so I cut it down to about 75 centimeters. And my husband was horrified. I said, "Don't worry, it'll regrow," and it did regrow. So last year, it put on new growth. I trained it right and left at 45 degrees into this diamond shape, and I will continue shaping it this year. I don't think it's going to have any blossom, but even if it does, I think I would not let it fruit, just give it a rest. Coming around to the main border, half of which I tackled this year and replanted. That's where I got a lot of the plants from the plant sale, specifically the phlox, the astrantia, a few aquilegia. The other half of this border has not been and won't be done this year. I've taken out the perennial weeds that I can see, but mostly I'm going to leave this as it is. I need to take away some of the fallen ivy trimmings that have come down here because they have been sheltering insects, but I think it's time to take them away. Then again, I might experiment with leaving them there and see what happens, but I've noticed in past years that ivy leaves don't rot down too well, and they're quite slow. But we might see how that goes. Maybe it'll be the best thing to leave them there is a space here that I'd like to put some transplanted camassia. The camassia are still in a border where they are struggling with the lack of light and a lot of competition with the roots. Now, I've heard that camassia in a border, if planted in a border, can really run away, but that's not been the case here. I've come around to the east side of the house. This is I'm walking again along the gravel path that leads around the house, and there's also a slim raised border down this side of the house. This is one leg of the U that I mentioned, our U-shaped garden. This is the raised border that's about 2 meters deep and 14 meters long, and these conditions are very challenging. In here I have some woody shrubs that are growing okay. Osmanthus, clipped into balls, and an old lilac. There's vinca, ajuga. They grow well in this dry shade and give me good evergreen color, but other things in here just don't thrive. I would like to find, if I can, the camassia, not to be confused with the alliums. The foliage looks a bit similar when they're emerging, but of course the allium foliage stinks of garlic. This is Nectaroscordum siculum, which is evidently eaten as a culinary allium in Bulgaria, although I've never tried it myself. I'm pretty sure I'm looking at the foliage of the camassia. I would like them to be relocated to that spot up near the border where I was talking about maybe leaving the ivy leaves in place. I raked up this gravel yesterday to clear out the old leaves, and I just put all the leaves in a bucket and brought them 3 feet this way to the corner and dumped them all there. This is the corner of the garden that is right outside my office. It's about maybe 7 feet by 8 feet, and there's a seating area. There's containers that have blueberries in them. There is a tall, ancient stone wall, and there's a wall fountain that you might be able to hear. This wall fountain is very simple. It's just a combination of a mask and out of the decorative mask in the shape of a gecko. And out of the gecko's mouth is a stream of water that falls down onto a line of Portuguese tiles, and then the tiles rest in a pot which is inside a tub container. And sunken into the container, hidden away, is the pump that brings the water back up behind the tiles to the mask, out the gecko's mouth, and around it goes. There are a lot of frogs and newts over here, so that's another reason I like to keep the leaf litter in place. And it's also a good mulch for the clematis, another group 3 clematis which grows here. We definitely have slugs and snails, but we have slugs and snails that are mostly under control, thank you to the frogs and the newts. I don't see a lot of jobs that need to be done here, so apart from moving those camassia, I think what I will focus on doing is, again, labeling plants. There are the house wall here is on the other side of the gravel path that I'm walking along now, and there are 2 plant theaters, and they're covered in plants, most of them for the sale, and there's a long windowsill, and that too has got plants for the sale. I'm just checking to see if there's any roots emerging from this Salix Mount Asso, that beautiful pink budded willow that looks sensational in wintertime. I took these cuttings from Amosfield, where I'm a volunteer, and we were cutting it back because the salix was overtaking a path, or hanging over a path. So I took some of the prunings home, trying to root them, but they're not rooted yet. Peeping in the cold frame, this is the one protected place outside of the garden where I have plants growing on. There's some healthy looking arabis here. That's a matte evergreen rock plant. Oops. And I have some of my precious lupins, the wild made lupins here from seed. Their first true leaves are coming out. I'm going to, alright, this is urgent. I'm going to take this entire container out of here, bring it into the potting shed, and I'm going to replant these today because these are showing their first true leaves, and also the leaves look ever so slightly chlorotic. I think they want to be out of this seed tray and in not their forever home, but potted on. So, I found my number one job. If I look long and hard enough, I find my top priority in the garden. Thank you for listening today, and hope to see you again next time. Bye-bye.